Welcome to the AI in Education podcast. In our February edition this week, we've got a lot of frenzy around news and some research. So, hi Ray, how are you and where are we seeing you today?
Well, as usual, Dan, I'm working from my home office. I've actually turned my home office around a little bit because I've got a beautiful view out onto forest. But I realized I never looked at it because it was behind my monitor. So I've shut the blinds because of the glow. So now it's out to my left. I can see beautiful nature out there, but it means you can't see the same things in my background, but I can at least prove that I own a book or two. It's not, I don't get everything from AI.
And all your awards in the background as well. That shelf is buckling under the weight of the awards, I can see.
Yes, Dan. Obviously, it's a very blurry background.
And I'm glad to be back as well because I've been in the UK for the last 3 weeks or so. I know we've got a couple of episodes out in the meantime for that, which have been going really well, like the interview with Mike Bassett on the AI detectors research, which is amazing. And then the Irish team last week interviewed us. It was like a sort of a Inception interview, right?
Yeah, I thought it was a really great interview to share with the listeners of this podcast because it was originally recorded for their podcast, but I think we talked about some of our backstory and some of the stories, and it was a great summary. I missed you while you were away in the UK, Dan, but I wasn't the only person. I was at the Sydney University AI Symposium, and one of our previous guests came running down the stairs to see me and said, "Oh, hi, it's great to see you, Dan."
Oh, love it. That's fantastic. But luckily, though, there's been no news this week in AI and education, is there?
Oh, Dan. Have you switched your news feed off while you've been away? Look, I've had to there has been so much because it is, 6 weeks since we recorded a news episode, and there has been a lot of news. But I went through the news and decided that I think we should talk about some bigger issues that we probably wouldn't have time to do normally. And all the little news stuff we'll just shove off to 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Because I think there have been some pretty significant things that are worth talking about in detail.
Now,
so if you're okay with that, let's start with some acronyms.
Absolutely. OECD was the first one, right?
Okay. So the OECD, they produced a report called the Digital Education Outlook 2026.
Yes.
So these reports are a kind of, what are we learning about digital learning and what does it mean for the year ahead? And it's 2026. So of course, they're just talking about generative AI. So they're not talking about any other digital education technology. It's just Gen AI focused.
OECD have done lots of publications in the past, haven't they? So that's quite surprising, really, that you will not surprising, but they've picked big trends like data analytics, personalized learning, things like that over the last several years. So now the pivot you're saying is around AI, right?
Yeah, and they've been doing a lot of policy stuff on AI and education as well. So I think that's good. It's a big report with a lot of detail in it. So maybe we just start with a couple of headlines. Now, we have said in the past, AI is a dual-use technology. It's like nuclear. It can be used for good and bad. And probably education saw that early on. But 2 stats that I saw in the report just absolutely prove this straight out of the gate. So 6 out of 10 teachers agree that AI helps them with writing or improving lesson plans. But 7 out of 10 believe AI can harm academic integrity by letting students pass off AI work as their own.
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable to say those 2 things, that it can help learning and it can also undermine learning. It's reasonable to say both of those things at the same time, but I think there might be something different felt by students. So some of the things they're talking about here are things we've talked about on the podcast, like if students use generative AI without tutoring guardrails, they might be learning more, but their exam results are likely to go down because they are using it to do the learning for them instead of doing the learning themselves.
Yeah.
They're kind of replacing the learning process with, AI do this for me.
Yeah.
But if you give students an AI tutor, and again, I'll go back to, I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago, it could be as simple as an AI that's told not to give the student the answer or to be a Socratic tutor, then that can enhance exam results because it's not substituting the learning, it's guiding the student through the learning. So I think it's a fair point to make, and it is about how we use it, not whether we use it. And in the report, they talk about using generative AI with pedagogical intent. So how do you use it to help you develop skills like critical thinking or creativity and collaboration? And that whole thing, they wrap up into a phrase, metacognitive laziness. So that whole issue of, if we use AI to allow us to have metacognitive laziness, then we're not going to learn things.
Yeah.
And we're going to de-skill ourselves. And this risk isn't just an education thing. This is a risk in business as well. You know, if you go into the world of employment and you just believe everything AI tells you, that's metacognitive laziness.
And I suppose just for the listeners in there, you know, in education circles, people talk about metacognition a lot. And the way I remember listening to Stephen Heppel years ago talking about metacognition, and the way he phrased that was, metacognition is thinking about thinking. So you're understanding the process that you're doing to think about something. So you're thinking about your thinking. You're thinking, well, I'm analyzing this problem, and I'm now kind of going to actually sit down and think about what I need to do to work through that problem. And what they're trying to say here, I suppose, is that when we stop thinking about how we're thinking, it's sounding too weird about it, then we become a bit lazy, because the AI is doing the metacognition for us and we just go into the answer. So it's a bit like when you're doing further study or a master's degree or something like that, you're actually thinking a bit more detail. It's not just about the facts. It's about, well, let me critically analyze something and think about how I'm going to manage that thinking process. So really, really interesting. But I think metacognitive laziness could be our phrase for the year, because that's going to come, because this was that came up a little bit as well, the cognitive escalators and the cognitive stairs, where Simon Breakspear mentioned that in the last series last year. So
yeah,
might come up more.
And it is different between learning and other things. So if I think about it, using the lifting the weights at the gym analogy, the purpose of lifting weights at the gym is not to lift the weights. The goal isn't to get the weight from 1 meter above the floor to 2 meters above the floor. But when I go to the DIY store, the goal of me lifting a bag into my trolley is to get it into the trolley. And so we've got that disjoint between the purpose we might use AI for in education and the purpose we might use AI for when the students go out to work. I was talking about this last week at the conference. There's a significant overlap between what we would call cheating in education and would call efficiency in employment, especially becoming obvious with AI. So there's deeper questions that I think we've got to answer about how do we help students understand the purpose of education, which is to help them learn, not to get a specific exam number. And so it's getting that bit right, and I guess making sure students stay motivated.
And teachers are always going to have that issue. I think the academic integrity versus performance is always going to be the key lever that teachers and educators are always going to be thinking about, because you want to get the gains, but you want to make sure that you're doing that with integrity as you're moving through the learning process. So that's always going to be a bit of a challenge and a pivot that people are going to be trying to manage, I suppose, going forward. Well, were there any recommendations out of this report? Were there things that are useful for people to take on board?
Yeah, they had a bit of discussion before they got to the recommendation section. They had a bit of discussion around assessment and kind of that reflection that we're starting to move to assessing the process rather than the final product. And in that, they were then talking about how do you make the thinking process visible and a bit more measurable? If you think about it in your maths exams, you could get marks for your thinking even if the answer was wrong.
Yeah.
And that's starting to expand out. So recommendations, they're pretty broad. One of them was, obviously, we've got to pick the right ways to use Gen AI to support learning.
Yeah.
And that means we've also got to develop the right AI tools to enhance teaching and learning. And so general generative AI tools, ChatGPT without the right learning guardrails are probably going to undermine learning. So then how do you get the right tools in place? The other thing is they talk about needing much more effective frameworks for regulating AI to protect learners and learning. So in Australia, we have the world's first social media ban for under 16s. That happened over the course of the last couple of months.
Yeah.
But maybe we should pair that with a rule that an AI system that's working with an under 16-year-old works differently. It doesn't tell them the answer. It looks to, oh, this sounds like you're trying to understand something for your school assignment, so let me guide you through the information as opposed to giving you the answer. I think that's a good recommendation. The last recommendation is to make sure that as we increase the use of digital learning, we make it equitable so that all learners and all teachers benefit.
Yeah, so very interesting. They also had some predictions at the end of this OECD report, didn't they?
Yeah, they made some predictions about what's going to happen. So I'm always interested because they've done this in the past. In 2023 and 2021, they issued reports. So I went back before I started to go, oh, well, do these predictions look good? Is how did the last set of predictions work? So I looked at the report they did in 2021, which was specifically about digital technology. And they talked about AI, learning analytics, robots, all the things that they thought were going to change education. So here's what they predicted in 2021. Adapted learning systems were going to be the way to personalized learning.
Okay.
So we know that's got upsides and downsides.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting prediction. Don't think it really landed. We've not got the all-encompassing adaptive learning systems that they forecast.
No.
They talked about, this seems astonishing at this point. They talked about measuring and boosting student engagement with eye trackers and facial feature monitoring and gamification of learning. Do you remember when those were all the rage, Dan?
Yeah.
And it was all about learning analytics and how can we pull this stuff together. That's no longer a big thing. In fact, I can't remember the last time somebody specifically talked about learning analytics. So yeah, interesting. And then the other thing is robots. Like in their 2021 report, robots were a big feature of it. They were going to have robots for small group teaching. They were going to have telepresence robots for remote teaching. They were going to have robot teachers for remote classrooms.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of those, the essence of those three things there, I think AI is going to advance those things on. If you take that adaptive learning systems, AI is actually a great, maybe the missing key to drive proper adaptive learning now. The student engagement and early learning analytics, that is going to be better prepared via AI in things like Microsoft Fabric and all that kind of stuff in the background. And robots, I suppose, that kind of connection in with what Elon Musk is doing. He's kind of doing the Grok AI stuff, but also connected in with the Tesla robots, and he's banking on kind of automation. So the AI is I suppose an enabler for some of these technologies that they talked about in 2021.
But it's almost a reset, isn't it? Of going back to those ideas and saying, oh, now we can achieve it differently.
Yeah, we can do it.
So the other thing that they had in their 2021 report was the blockchain was going to be the answer as well.
All right.
It was going to ride over the horizon on a horse and give us a universal credentialing infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, I therefore didn't pay too much attention to their predictions for 2026 because I think we're in an even more volatile situation. So it's probably difficult to build good forecasts for the future. So I think it's about the ideas, the recommendations, rather than necessarily the predictions where the value in that report comes from. Now, I think the UK are moving pretty fast on this one, probably faster than other countries. So the new Department for Education standards for AI in education explicitly address some of these issues. And I think that education policy experts are going to be asking for more of that in other countries. We'll come on to the new UK standards.
Yeah, I'd like to pick that up a bit later as well, because I was in the UK when I was released on it. Yeah, I picked up a lot of chatter on LinkedIn when I was away in the UK on that, and it was really interesting. It's quite polarizing. Did you get your teeth into it? That was a summary from your view for the educators listening.
Okay, so these standards were issued in January, and they are standards that the expectation is any AI deployed in education by an institution or a system conforms to these standards.
Yeah.
My first take is nothing currently conforms to these standards.
Yeah.
So first of all, they looked at things like, let's make sure systems are safe. So does it have content filtering in it? Does it have monitoring, tracking, and alerting? So they talked about recording all the prompts, all the responses, and then alerting a local supervisor or admin where somebody tries to search for or have an inappropriate conversation with AI. So I don't think anything really does that just yet.
Just on that though, because that is something that, like, I know you've done some stuff like this as well, and some of the other folks, like Matt was doing some stuff as well. And it is like my general view on this personally, and I know I'm biased to the Microsoft side on it, but there's a lot of AI out there which doesn't have governance and controls.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm having conversations with large systems and things, and the stuff we've done with Dan Hart and all of that, or stuff any companies are doing, and trying to be agnostic about it with the Microsoft stuff, and to a certain extent some of the Google stuff, is kind of enterprisey. So that does have filtering and monitoring controls. Whereas when people are developing their own things, you've got to build that in. So like Prem and the team with C Chat, they've had to develop their own filtering and management and control in there. So I think it's the right thing to put in, the right spirit of things to put in, but it's gonna a bit like, what's the bloody horrible ST4S, I think it's called, in Australia, the Safer Technologies for Schools. It's a way to try to monitor and manage applications for education to make sure that they conform to certain privacy, and which is it's good in spirit, but very difficult to implement.
And that's exactly right. So they've created requirements that AI will actively monitor conversations for signs of learner distress and direct students to human support when it's needed, and create alerts for the institution, and manage the risk of emotional and social development. So, all of that, every person that would look at that would probably have a different definition of what that means.
Yeah.
What does learner distress mean? Is it, I've got this deadline and I can't get there and I've got to do it? Or is it some of the darker things? They also said, make sure that AI isn't acting as a cognitive substitute. So it's got to support rather than interfere with the learning process.
Yeah.
And the system should generate regular reports on cognitive offloading. Again, it's great to say that as a theory, but then how do you do that in practice?
Yeah. It was also in there talking about the practical side. It was one of the things in there was about full content moderation, regardless of the device used, including bring your own device and smartphone. Schools already do bring your own device, and at universities, you bring your own personal device in, you connect up to the systems. Then the questions that I'm having as well from schools and things is about, well, where does that duty of care lie? Because you've got this barrier then. If you were supposed to be looking at this in BYOD and smartphones, it's well, how do we manage kids' smartphone use at an educational institution level? It becomes quite tricky.
And then they also go on to say that they don't want AI in education to use persuasive or exploitative designs. So, it's supportive, not addictive. And I kind of think back to, gosh, I've said in the past, wouldn't it be great if learning was as addictive as Netflix? And so, again, there's a very fine line about how you do that, because surely if we can get students more engaged in learning, and perhaps that does use persuasive or exploitative design in order to trick them into learning. I remember that phrase from a case study I filmed in the UK years ago. So they've gone into a lot of depth around that, a lot of depth about making sure that we don't make AI seem more human. I really wish this phrase could be something shorter, the anthropomorphize. Every time I get that wrong. And so they talk about not doing that. And I got a little worried about that, because they've laid out some very specific rules, like the AI can't have names. It can't have descriptions or avatars or characters that could give an impression of personhood or identity or agency. But won't that risk having maybe disengaged learning experiences? Because young children get engaged in learning through Bluey and Peppa Pig and the Teletubbies.
Yeah.
But that is explicitly banned in
if
the
you're using it to be a historical figure or something like that. And again, this is a very good point, because if you actually specify, you super prompts, don't you, in a lot of the tools. So you'd say, look, I'm interested in cars and guitars and whatever. And then it gives you that personalized response, when you say, well, I'm struggling with ratio. Well, let me talk to you about ratio in context of like a guitar string or whatever. And it gives you that personalization is really important. So you're right. It's a very difficult balance there. And the more you push it away, and it's always going to be the case, isn't it? The more locked down and filtered a tool is going to become, then the less useful it might become.
And so, the example you just gave, I could create a digital Shakespeare. That's okay, but it can only be short term. like for delivery of a class or two, it's not intended that you give a personality to the AI long term. And yet I think about the bots I engage with on websites for companies where they do try and stick a personality onto it. In fact, Copilot is building a personality, isn't it? The consumer Copilot has got that little bubbly character, which is designed to engage. So my worry is if the guidance then creates education AI as the dull, grey, boring one, then students will not use it outside the classroom. They'll use it when they're told they have to. And when they go home, they'll go and use the friendly, helpful one.
Yeah.
And as part of that, they've also banned, and they explicitly said this, they've banned AI in education that is sycophantic or flattering, which makes me sad because I am so pleased when ChatGPT tells me that my ideas are brilliant. and so, while I can understand each of the individual rules, if you over apply all of those rules, you do end up with the dull AI. And great teachers make learning engaging and interactive for their students. And if we're saying, yes, but we don't want AI to give engaging, interactive experience for students that they might become attached to, we're going to put the line in the right place.
One thing this does do as well, and I'm not sure how it applies in Australian areas, but in schools in Australia, in the UK, they've got a safeguarding lead. So there are safeguarding leads in schools in Australia as well. But there is a element to which does connect it in. It says it requires the institution to make sure that the designated safety lead, a safeguarding lead, and the contact details, and they're all connected in to any implementation of AI tools. So you're bringing in other people other than the IT team when you're thinking about the safeguarding of these tools. Just putting other people on the hook, which is a good thing.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think we need this. I think the challenge is it's a very strict set of rules that if you over-interpret them, you end up maybe not going in the right direction. And so it's about doing the right thing and heading in the right direction, because the reality is we're still developing things as we go.
Yeah, there's things you pick away. There's things about saying that you need a multi-factor authentication with accounts, which is good, but schools very rarely do that, and sometimes they ban mobile phones. So but it is good. I really like the spirit of this. I think it's pretty robust, and there are bits in there. Obviously, there are to implement, and there's bits that might feel draconian, but I think this is where it should land, because we are going into this area now where there's a lot of people making AI products and tools for the classroom, and they don't have a lot of these things in there, especially around governance and compliance. And that should be essential, really.
Yeah. And so I guess if you're outside of the UK, maybe this is a good pick and mix list to look at it and go, oh, do you know, you're right. We shouldn't make our AI seem like a human, but we do want to have some personality. And then the bits around safeguarding. Can you see if your AI that you are giving to your students in a school is having a conversation with a distressed student? Can you get an alert on that?
Yeah.
And is your AI supplier a partner in making that experience right or not? So don't get me wrong. I think there's some great stuff in here. I think it is quite a while to be able to get an AI to tick off all of these requirements. And they were dropped in January.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was really, that's what I found weird, is it dropped in January, and that's when the schools are going back in the UK to term 2. The other good thing in this, they did link to other legislations as well. So it wasn't like just written on its own. They talked about GDPR. They talked about the EU right to erase your data. They talked about a whole heap of things around the ICO, lots of other standards as well, the Computer Misuse Act. So, it wasn't trying to do it all. It was referring to other acts as well around standard data security areas, which is good.
Yeah, and it wasn't about putting brakes on, because at the same time they announced these standards, they also said, we are going to provide an AI tutor for disadvantaged children.
Yeah.
They put in England $23 million down for the tech industry and teachers to collaborate to create AI tutoring tools. And they have said that by the end of 2027, all disadvantaged students in years 9 to 11 will have an AI tutor available for them, funded by the government. And so what they want to do is encourage those experiments and start to surface what is good. And then in the UK, the definition of disadvantaged schools is children that qualify for free school meals. So in the UK, the model is, if you have a very low income, you don't have to pay for lunch at school. That is funded by the government, and that's their definition of disadvantaged students. I had free school meals when I was at school, Dan, so I'm a disadvantaged student of history.
I don't think I ate. I was too busy being bullied, I think.
Okay. So just another thing that maybe links into all of this, because only some people I think are going to go down that route of looking at the UK things and thinking about it in their school outside of the UK. But the New York Times, they did a good, interesting article at the beginning of the year. The title was, "As Schools Embrace AI Tools, Skeptics Raise Concerns." So I think this is interesting. They talked about the large-scale AI projects going on. So UAE are giving 200,000 students and teachers the Microsoft tools.
Yeah.
Kazakhstan are giving their 165,000 teachers ChatGPT. El Salvador rolling out their AI tutoring system based on Grok. When I saw that story, Grok did not have a good reputation at the beginning of January.
I know.
And then they talked about the AI training programs going out for students and teachers around the world. So they actually talked about some of the research that we've talked about on the podcast about the positive and the negative impacts of AI on education. And their conclusion is we're still in the experimentation stage. It's still about experiments and research to understand the best way. And I absolutely agree. Like, we know there are some obvious pitfalls to avoid, but we do not necessarily know the best way. So if you've got a colleague and they've come into the new year going, AI bar humbug, or they've gone, AI is the answer to everything, then either they can listen to the last 2 years of the podcast or get them to go and have a read of the New York Times article. We'll put the show notes, the link into the show notes, and it's a good read.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got to have that balance there. And this is coming through in a lot of the articles in the news at the minute, isn't it? With this balancing act of kind of where the AI tools should sit. It's showing maturity in thought now, I think, of where people should be implementing these tools. But, it's big scale stuff they're talking about here, right?
Okay, so here's another thing in maturity and thought. If you're in a university,
Yeah,
a lot of the discourse has been around the downsides of AI. In fact, in Australia last weekend, The Australian, which is one of our national newspapers, did a bunch of stories about students cheating, basically. And one of the challenges is how do you actually integrate AI into a degree? Because there is an expectation from employers that students will have skills in using it. So what does a university learning look like in a world of ubiquitous AI? And Deakin University have done some great work on this. Now, they got together a 40-member multidisciplinary community of inquiry.
right.
So lots of meetings, over a year's work, hours of discussions, lots of data and input from everybody.
And people from different faculties and disciplines, which is good, which is really, really good.
Okay, but here's the surprise. They managed to summarize all of that work down into a 4-page document and 6 curriculum recommendations.
Oh, goody.
It all fits on one page, Dan. I have never seen that with so much input from such a big group of academics.
So 6 recommendations, 4 pages. What are these recommendations?
I read so many research papers where it's taken 15 pages to say no or yes.
Yeah.
And I nearly fainted when I saw this. Anyway, I thought, let's just see if we've got a headline. So there are 6 recommendations that they are making. And this set of recommendations is everybody across the university has to build these ideas in. So the first is, I'll tell you how they describe it, I'll tell you how I describe it. They describe it as prioritize the cultivation of the emerging professional self to ethically and intentionally engage in the AI evolving world of work.
Wow.
So what they're kind of saying is graduates need more than just technical skills. They need a sense of how AI fits into that, and to be thinking about the rules about how they use it in their chosen profession or whatever.
So this is geared towards staff and students.
This is recommendations that staff follow for the learning journey for their students.
Right, got you. Right.
Yeah. So this is about students building up a picture of how it's used. The second is a strong ethical foundation in the first year.
Good.
That students can then understand and apply later on. So, getting that ethics piece in place so that as you're then, I don't know, studying law
Yeah.
and you're having discussions about how AI is going to change the profession and you're learning skills that the profession needs that maybe links AI into it, you've got the ethical foundation for it.
So you'd expect in year one of a degree course, like an ethical AI module compulsory to get through, I'm guessing.
I would guess that would be the way that
Yeah.
many people do it. The recommendation 3, intentionally frame critical and creative AI evolving practices according to the ethical and philosophical perspectives of the disciplines. So every discipline has its own way of thinking and judging and creating.
Yeah.
Every profession does that. So what they're saying is, great, we want you to frame that thought about using AI and the AI practice in your industry within the way that your industry thinks.
Gotcha.
I'll do the last 4 quickly. Number 4, challenge disciplinary perspectives and AI involving practices by scaffolding opportunities to engage across and between disciplines. So don't just stay in your silo.
Okay.
Number 5, design workplace learning that helps students safely translate their exploratory AI practices into self-directed and purposeful professional practices, i.e., students should meet AI in the workplace for the first time during their university course, not the first time they go out to work.
Yeah.
And give them safe spaces to try things.
Mm.
And then the last recommendation, provide opportunities to safely explore the complexities and limitations of relationships between humans and technology. I think that's really important because we're all learning where AI fits into the way that we work. We don't want to hand all of our work over to it, but we do want it to take on some things and help extend us as humans.
I think you could take those 6 and also extrapolate those like in a slightly different way, in a slightly less formal way for K-12 as well. This is pretty straightforward, isn't it? But that's really good.
Yeah, it's a great little paper. It's only 4 pages. I'll put the link in the show note. Okay, let's finish with one last thing. Let's give something away. Or rather, let's tell everyone that Leon is giving something away. So, friend of the podcast, Leon Furze, he's written a new book about teaching AI ethics. It's called Teaching AI Ethics, and it's free. So it's an ebook. It's also a standalone website because basically each of the chapters has got a section on the website as well, so you can consume it either way. It's very practical. It's very grounded in the real world, and it is written by somebody who understands classrooms. It's not just theory.
And there's a heap of case studies in there as well, which is great.
Yeah, I love the case study examples in there. There are a couple in there that I didn't know about, but it deals with things like bias, privacy, truth, labor, AI labor versus human labor. And then it comes out with teaching approaches about how you slot those ideas into your existing teaching.
Yeah, well done, Leon, for this. It's a great resource and great that you're giving that book away for free. Well done, mate.
Yeah, and I think we're pretty divided on this AI ethics piece because I think there's a kind of panic or a resignation going on about it. And the panic is about cheating and students using this stuff. And are we all going to lose our jobs? All of those things. Instead, it's about, here's a toolkit to help students think critically about AI in the world that they're going to live in.
Yeah.
And yeah, really, really fantastic. We'll put the show in the show notes. If you can't wait to go to the show notes, then remember these 3 words, teaching AI ethics, put that into a browser.com and you're there and you can download the book.
Awesome. Well, that was amazing. Spin around the news part there this week, right? Amazing.
There's loads more news that we didn't cover. We'll cover that more in 2 weeks' time for the next news and research episode. But I thought those 3 topics were big topics worth spending a meaty chunk of time on.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing some of that research there, Ray. That's really good. I'm going to go back and look over some of that UK stuff. I do think, just a quick perspective towards the end, bringing that thing together, we talked about the UK quite a bit today. What I did notice being back in the UK is that there does seem to be a sense of urgency over there. And I think maybe to do with the fact that Brexit's gone, the economy's not going great over there. They are trying to innovate. There is a sense of them trying to lead with AI there. And, I think that can be extrapolated to all the schools in Australia and around the world. How you're going to lead in your own communities, how you're going to drive the best practice from all the research and the news and things that we share on these pods. Because you can, if you do this well, you can really differentiate your school and your school systems.
Fabulous. Well, maybe Dan, you can go through your Rolodex and we can have some guests from the UK on the podcast talking about what's happening there and see that into a context that others can use.
Amazing. Cool. Thanks again, mate.
Thanks, Dan.
See you next week. Bye.